It's day 5 of building my Bootstrap SaaS in public, and today we're going to focus on solution design elements to start working on the front end of our application by designing and building the primary workflow. If you don't know me, my name is Sean Boyce, and I've spent years building SaaS applications. I'm building my next one in public so that you can borrow from my process to hopefully increase your chances of SaaS success. Subscribe to follow along so that you don't miss a step in the process. So far, we've done a ton of research and stood up our landing page. Today, we're going to focus on working with AI to help us with designing and building the primary workflow for our users around the solution design elements of what we expect to build for the version 1 of the application. I'll link to the playlist with all the videos that I've created so far so you can check them out if you've missed anything along the way. So why do we want to do this step now? Well, we've got our landing page just about ready, so we can use that to market the idea and test it with ads and do all kinds of cool stuff there. But I want to be able to go further so we can get back to the target market prospects we interviewed with a bit more context, which should include the look and feel and how we expect the application to work. This is great for getting real feedback. And you got to realize that sometimes folks really need to see it to believe it. We can make that work for them with the help of AI. Plan is to work with Claude to help us put together those solution design elements for what we want to design and build into that primary workflow for version 1 of our application. And for that, we're going to use Lovable again, because Lovable isn't just a website builder, it actually builds basically entire web apps. So we can use that to do heavy elements of our UI design, which will ultimately be a key part of obviously the application that we're building. My step 1 here is to go back to Claude and to look for instructions to provide the Lovable to help us with designing that version 1 experience of our application. So you can see I've got my prompt queued up here, and I'm going to walk you through basically what it includes. So first and foremost, we want to give it an idea what we're trying to achieve, which is what I just mentioned. Also, we want to tell it what that should include. So we want you to give us both in the format of instructions for Lovable to help us with designing and building it, but here's what I want to be included. Area for account management, billing management, that's where they'll handle payments and things like that, and then a section to capture and store the credentials for what's going to be important for how this application is going to work. So just to reiterate, we're designing and building a SaaS in a bootstrapped way to help law firms and lawyers with managing any unbilled time that they currently have. So in order to capture that, we need to design and build integrations with a couple of areas where we can get the data from that tracks the work that they do, like their email systems and their note takers. And that's likely where I'm planning to start. And probably with 2 of the most commonly used ones, those being Microsoft Outlook and Fathom Note Taker. You can always add more, but I know they are currently using both of these and that we can get data from each via API if we design it into how our application works. So that's where we're going to start, and we're going to add a section to the application where the user can manage those credentials so that we can get that data on their behalf to do everything else that we need as part of this process. The user is also going to be able to control how frequently, basically kind of like the job runs automatically by our application in order to capture the context that it needs. So how that's going to work is probably going to default that to run maybe once a day, and probably likely only on business days when those lawyers are actually working, likely at the end. So what it's going to do is it's going to compare what it was able to find from the email platform and the note taker, as well as another section we're going to give them to add their client credentials or client information, which is essentially kind of like names, emails, things like that. Anything that we can use to sort through both of those sources and find any of that context for the clients they actually did work for. And then the system, our application, is going to create a report to track what did you do for which client, how much time did you spend doing it, and when did you do that. With that report, that can be used to create the invoices they need to recapture all of this unbilled time. Now, there's so much more we can go into here in terms of bells and whistles and all kinds of cool stuff. But I think what's important for this version 1 is to make sure we kind of capture the essence of the foundation of what it is that we're building. So don't feel the need to kind of add everything here. I would start with what gives you most of the basics and the things that you're going to need in order to make the application work. And once we have that, we could do more testing by going back to our target market with it, our target market prospects, those that we did the research with, and get additional feedback. So I'm going to kick this off, let it run, and then I'll fast forward through this part so you don't have to wait for it to finish. But in a couple minutes, we'll come back to review the results. Okay, Claude finished, so let's take a look at the results. So over here, it's got a summary of what it did on the left, which pretty much covered everything I was looking for and in much greater detail than I was expecting, which is always helpful. It created a markdown file, or the MD file, which is what we're seeing over here on the right. And we can copy that. We can do whatever we want with it. We can save it, obviously. But I'm going to take that and pipe that into Lovable to see what it's able to produce given this context. But let's take a quick look in a little bit more detail. Good overview, captured the name. It's got brand elements, which is great. It has added some of these additional kind of structures or diagrams to help provide Lovable with context for what we're looking for there. And I can change any of this if I'd like before I move over to Lovable and ask it to do its thing. But I'll probably keep it as is just to see how well it produces its results based on just this one attempt. So it's got some dashboard elements down here below. It's got ideas for how to design the reports page and the reports themselves, which is great. And just about all the detail you could possibly expect from this process, which is crazy helpful. And again, this would be incredibly time consuming if we had designed this ourselves, but we gave it some guidelines to follow and some guardrails to keep it on track. And so far, from what I could tell, it's done a really good job. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it even has some details and some recommendations for what we might kind of do next. It's got sample data to add to the report. That's something I didn't mention in the previous step. Something else that I requested as part of that prompt was give the user a sample report so they can see what one would look like if it ran and it did find something. So here's what some of that looks like. It's got some sample clients to include with the information and what still needs to be built. Other considerations as well also, and other things that we can include in future parts of this process. So got everything I need, I think, right now in order to give Lovable more than enough context to design my UI and really potentially the full front end of my application for at least V1. We'll talk further once we get that step completed in terms of like what's next technically. But this is usually what I do when I'm looking to build a SaaS application and I'm working on V1. I work with tools like Lovable to do some of the front end work because I feel like it gets the design down pretty well, and I can integrate it pretty directly with the site or landing page as well also, and I can use all of that, continue my interview process while I'm building with AI using other tools as well too. So when it comes to doing things more technically or comprehensively, back-end, database, and all that kind of stuff, we're going to introduce additional tools. But for now, this is excellent progress. Okay, we're ready to take our instructions from Claude and go over to Lovable. So all I'm going to do here, all I really need to do is click this copy button. I could download the markdown file, save it, all that kind of stuff. I would recommend you do that. But since I'm doing this in real time with you, I'm just going to copy everything that's over here on the right-hand side and jump over to the Lovable tab. Now, I've written a custom prompt for Lovable here, and I'm going to describe for you what's in there before I copy the rest of all this context that Claude helped us produce. What this prompt basically says is what I want Lovable to do with the context that I'm going to provide. So at this stage in the process, what I typically do is I just try to get a link from my landing page to kind of go right into the application without authentication. Now, Lovable can help you design and build functional authentication. That may or may not be the way you want to do things, though. I don't do it that way. I use Lovable just to do kind of front end and UI work. When I do the back end and the database stuff, I switch over to kind of more traditional programming and development environments, but still leveraging AI extensively. And I'm going to explain and show you all that as part of this process as well too. But for now, what I do, because I want to be able to use this landing page to demo the functionality of the application or send it to some of my prospects so they can play around with it to get a feel for it as well too, is I tell it what I'm looking for, which is I want things like add a sign in button and that end a page. So design that so when users come back to our landing page or application, they can use that and it'll match the look and feel of the site and they can log in, they can authenticate once all that stuff's wired up. Again, it's not going to be functional yet. You can also wire all the primary calls to action buttons, which for me are largely these like start free trial buttons, to signing up or creating an account. So design that as well too, but again, don't make that functional. The third piece is to add a dashboard link somewhere here, which is going to be temporary. And the dashboard link is just going to skip any authentication elements and it's going to go right into the application that it's designing for us. And again, I do that to make this step of the process simpler. And because I'm going to be using it to do demos at this point, I won't keep that up there when the site is live or I'm running ads at it or anything like that. That's just really for me to kind of skip what is pretty straightforward in the form of authentication. There's no magic to that, so to speak. You need to do that right. You need to do that properly. But right now, that doesn't matter the most in terms of like making sure that authentication is working. To keep this process moving as efficiently as it can, I really need to focus on what the application does and how it does it, and then testing that with the target market. So again, I'm not going to do that with ads. I'm going to do that as part of like an interview process. But for right now, I want to just demonstrate what that functionality is ultimately going to be. So I don't really need to focus on authentication. I can figure that out later. So that's what this prompt says. Now, the only thing I'm going to do in addition to that is I'm just going to copy in the context from Claude. We're going to let Lovable run. I'll fast forward through that step so you don't have to wait around either, but a couple minutes later, we'll review that progress and see how it did. Literally just copy paste all that crazy amount of context from Claude. Who knows? We'll see if it's too much, but so far I haven't found Lovable to complain too much about that. I'd rather it have more than less, especially if it matches what it is that I'm looking for. So all that's in there now. I'm going to fire this off. We're going to let Lovable do its thing, and then we'll come back and review the results when it's done. All right, so Lovable's done. I haven't looked at it myself yet. We're going to look at it together to see how well it did. Okay, so here's your main interface with Lovable as well. Also, it added my dashboard button here, which is great. That's what I asked it to do. I'm going to pop this out into a new tab so that we can take better advantage of screen real estate from the perspective of the application. So here you go. So here's our landing page. And like I told it, I wanted a dashboard link so I could just go right into the application. So let's see what it did. Okay, nice, looking good. So here we've got a dashboard. It's added metrics, even things that I didn't really ask for, which is great. I like to do that sometimes because I want to take advantage of basically like the design capabilities that Lovable has. As in, I'm going to give it, again, those guidelines and some guardrails, and then I'm going to let it kind of figure things out a little bit. And the way I think about this is how I was working with designers previously, is I would tell them kind of like the essence or the vision for what it was I was going for, and then let them do their creative thing. I do the same with Lovable, and that often produces great results. So this dashboard looks pretty good. The design is exactly what I was looking for. I like the fact that it's presenting the user with relevant information for what the application does and the value that it's providing. And we can workshop this stuff further. Here's some recent reports, which is cool, including how much each report includes. And it also has a log for whenever it did run, but it didn't find any billable activity. I asked for that as well too, and it delivered. Let's check out the rest of these menu options. So I've got a dedicated report section, which is great. I've got search functionality, again, something I didn't ask for, but it included, which is great. So any of the basic features or things that users might expect, Lovable and tools like it are pretty good at adding that kind of stuff. My activity log, what it did and when, very good. Client list, so this is what I mentioned is part of what we need for the input. We need to know more about their current list of clients so that we can do that matching for them. We can probably do this eventually via some form of integration with wherever their existing source of clients are. I don't know exactly where that is now. Law firms use practice management software. It's kind of like a CRM for lawyers. I'll find out more as I'm doing these interviews and taking this back to them to learn more about their current experience and whether or not they're going to want to have integrations for this as well too. But this is future stuff we can do. We may not need all that context. They may be able to export from that system. We can import into this one to do our thing, which enables it to just kind of move faster. It's a component to providing the value for them, but it may not be critically important in the beginning. Wherever anything isn't critically important in the beginning, we're going to look to skip those steps so we can move faster and get our product to market sooner. Clients, here's our integration. So I asked for this specifically as well too. This looks pretty good. So it gives me both place to have what I was intending to build first. We'll get into that technically as far as a future step. I can connect it, configure it, test it, disconnect it, all good stuff. That's stuff that I was going to probably want anyway. So it included it. It lets me know what's connected. It also has like advertising sections a little bit for what may be coming next, which is also cool. I also like what it chose. I could see us going that way ourselves as well too. All right, let's see what else we got in here. So we got some settings. I did mention previously that I was going to enable the user to control these, but it would set by default, and it's got the ability to disable that as well also, as well as the ability to run the report manually itself via a button, which I like. So this is interesting. I didn't add this, but I was thinking about adding this. The ability for the user to include like what their billing rate is so that it could add up the numbers itself as well too. And I guess that makes more sense now. I wasn't thinking of adding that initially, but obviously when we have that information, Now, what we would have known if we hadn't included that is just the time that they've lost. Critically important element for why we're going to add that, and a default one as well too, is because now we can show them the monetary value that they're missing out as well too. And if they're willing to give us any form of that credit for how much we're recouping for them, that is a huge advantage for you. That is demonstrated value and of the most value really you can have in terms of what you're providing for them in the form of money. So I've mentioned that several times before. If your SaaS app is going to help them generate revenue, save revenue, cut costs, whatever, anything that impacts the financial performance is always very important and often very, very popular. So I like that as well too. I'm glad it added it. It had the know-how to kind of do that, and I didn't think of that explicitly for whatever reason. Okay, typical account-based information, which is good. We're always going to kind of want that. Managing accounts, all kinds of cool stuff. Even the ability to kind of export some data or delete an account, also fine. And then a billing section in terms of their profile, how it's set, what they want to do, managing their payments, seeing that history. Really just all kind of like covers all the bases. And that's what I was looking for. So even got the ability to kind of hide my menu here, which I like, which makes better use of my screen real estate. So I actually don't see a ton that I need to feel like I need to change just yet. I'm assuming, yeah, even this stuff is all kind of linked up. The links on the dashboard. Let's see if we can take a look at a report. So I clicked here, that wasn't active. I might change the way that works, but there is a link here to go to view report. So here I can see the reports. Let's see if I click on actual report, what I see. Awesome. I like the fact that it kind of focuses on the report itself. Gives me a list of the clients, the source it found it from, how much time, what that value was, and then it totals it. Not just for each individual section, but the bottom as well too. Cool, mark reviewed. So this is another thing I was thinking about doing. This is part of what I mentioned in a previous step, which is like, we could add a whole lot more here, but for now, we want to try to stick to fundamental requirements as much as possible because it reduces the scope of what we need to build, which reduces the amount of time we need to invest in order to get the product to market. But in terms of additional stuff, this one down here is kind of like a mark as reviewed, which I understand. What I'm thinking about adding in here somehow is ability for them to track whether or not they've actually built for this time. So I want to figure out how to do that. I'm thinking this kind of like mark as reviewed is a way that we may be able to do that. So they can come back and they can mark it, we build for this basically in this system. That would be manual, but if we can integrate with where they're doing that billing and invoicing, we can make that automated as well too, as potentially automating the actual billing and invoicing for them as well. Also, we can integrate there also. So we can take this so much further, right? And again, the key from my perspective is don't add all those, I call them the spinning rims just yet. Wait for now, show them this piece and see how they react to it. They like what they see? Are they interested in using this? Do they have ideas about where they want to take it? All kinds of good stuff there. The things that I brought up are probably intuitive, logical, and things they're likely going to want, but I want to hear that from them. And I don't want to fill in gaps or make too many assumptions because that could be a critical mistake. Awesome. So what I'm seeing here is fantastic so far. So in the first week, we've gone from just an idea to what appears to be a largely fully functional built version 1 of the application. Now, I know this isn't fully functional. It's full of a ton of sample data, but the point is it looks like it's fully functional. So I can use this to do demos now. And again, I've created these videos, I put time into editing or whatever, but in the amount of time that it's taken me to build this, this is easily 10 times more so faster than what it would have, long it would have taken me to get to this point, previous generation of tools and without the help of AI. So take full advantage by all means. This is an excellent way to make progress very quickly. The next steps in the process I'd recommend from here is to take what we've built and go back to our prospects, those folks that we've interviewed so far to get this far, and get some more data and context from them about what they see in terms of how well they like it. Are they seeing the values, the vision coming together for them? Have we hit the nail on the head or do we have more work to do, right? That feedback is going to be critically important as we're testing early and often and trying to turn this prototype and our SaaS idea into a successful business. Plus the additional layer of solution design elements as we get more technical to bring this thing fully to life and make it fully functional. So I've also created templatized versions of everything that I'm doing here with prompts and tools and all kinds of stuff. So check the link in the description below, gain access to that so you can follow along with your SaaS product build as well too. And that's it for this video. Stay tuned for what's coming next, which is those next steps that I just mentioned, and happy building.